Welcome back. Today I have to play Story Creator Part 3.
Ready to create an amazing story? Choose a book from
Let's-
one of these real-life writing heroes.
Okay,
to make a big story just like theirs.
let's change these.
Maya Angelou was a writer and poet who used her words for good.
A poet is someone who puts words together in a super special way called a poem.
Some poems rhyme, which means they have words that end in the same sound, like moon and balloon. Ooh, let's create a poem that rhymes, all about Dr. Zoom. A rhyming poem about Dr. Zoom. How should we start? A rhyming
It's super
poem
smart.
about Dr. Zoom. How should we start? Dr. Zoom is super smart. What's that, Dr. Zoom? These words make you feel good? And you want more? Okay. Also, Dr. Zoom loves tea. Almost as much as...
Having a turtle party.
Also, Dr. Zoom loves tea. Almost as much as having a turtle party. Wow, didn't see that coming. Dr. Zoom's brave and tries new things, like...
Flying with wings.
Zoom's brave and tries new things, like flying with wings. So super brave. Dr. Zoom can spend all afternoon dancing.
On the moon.
Dr. Zoom can spend all afternoon dancing on the moon. Dr. Zoom's got the moves. Did you know Dr. Zoom's favorite power is...
Singing in the shower.
Did you know Dr. Zoom's favorite power is singing in the shower? What a talented super turtle. And when it's time for bed, Dr. Zoom likes to cuddle on.
A pillow named Fred.
And when it's time for bed, Dr. Zoom likes to cuddle on a pillow named Fred. Those two go way back. Oh, Dr. Zoom. And even though our poem is just about done, Dr. Zoom, you're...
Number 1.
And even though our poem is just about done, Dr. Zoom, you're number 1.
Group hug.
The end. Wow, that was a great poem. Dr. Zoom just loves how we use our words for good.
Just like Maya Angelou.
Next.
Nellie Bly wrote about some big and sometimes scary adventures she went on. Nellie was bold. That means she was brave and willing to try new things.
Hey, let's create a story about Yadina being bold. At the playground, Yadina was too scared to try the monkey bars, so she went on.
The duck.
At the playground, Yadina was too scared to try the monkey bars, so she went on the duck. When suddenly, Dr. Zoom was carried away by...
A gust of wind.
When suddenly, Dr. Zoom was carried away by a gust of wind.
Hang on, Dr. Zoom!
Yadina had to be bold and chase after Dr. Zoom using her...
Jetpack.
Yadina had to be bold and chase after Dr. Zoom using her jetpack. Then, Dr. Zoom landed on top of...
The moon.
Then, Dr. Zoom landed on top of the moon. To save Dr. Zoom, Yadina had to be bold and climb up.
The monkey
To
bars.
save Dr. Zoom, Yadina had to be bold and climb up the monkey bars.
Yadina, I knew you could do it.
To celebrate rescuing Dr. Zoom, she gave her best turtle friend a big
Hug.
To celebrate rescuing Dr. Zoom, she gave her best turtle friend a big hug.
What a turtle-tastic story.
The end.
Zora Neale Hurston wrote all kinds of stories, and she shared them with people all around the world.
Hey, let's create a sharing story about Brad. Brad was writing his new comic book alone in...
The classroom.
Brad was writing his new comic book alone in the classroom. When suddenly Brad saw a lonely
Mummy.
when suddenly Brad saw a lonely mummy.
Aw, poor lonely guy.
So, Brad decided to share his comic book about...
Bike Man.
Bike Man. Reading Brad's comic book together made it so...
Happy.
happy.
Sharing makes everything better.
So then they decided to...
What a new story.
write a new story.
That story was awesome.
The end.
Thanks for telling an awesome sharing story about me.
Stories are best when you share them with others.
Just like Zora Neale Hurston.
Next.
Charles Dickens used his imagination to write great stories.
Stories that lots of people still love today.
Ooh, let's create a story about Brad's imagination. One day, Brad was laying down on his...
Beanbag.
One day, Brad was laying down on his beanbag. When suddenly, Brad imagined it was...
A castle.
When suddenly, Brad imagined it was a castle. And Brad imagined he was in...
The clouds.
And Brad imagined he was in the clouds. Then Brad imagined he saw...
Popcorn.
Then Brad imagined he saw popcorn.
Whoa, now that's using your imagination.
And Brad imagined he was holding a...
A lollipop.
And Brad imagined he was holding a lollipop.
Ooh, my imagination is exhausting.
So Brad imagined he was relaxing in...
His bedroom.
So Brad imagined he was relaxing in his bedroom.
Ooh, now there's a story I loved.
The end.
Thanks for telling such a silly story about my imagination.
Using your imagination makes everything more fun.
Just like Charles Dickens.
This
Maya
This
Angelou
again.
was a writer and poet who used her words
I'm
for
gonna give you
good.
one of these at the same time.
words together in a super special way called a poem. Some poems rhyme.
But one again.
The same sound, like moon and
Okay, how about I want to use next the final one.
the Bronte sisters were creative people who loved to pretend.
Charlotte, Emily, and Anne wrote lots of great stories.
Hey, let's create a story about us pretending.
One rainy day, Yadina pretended to be...
And a
One
bug.
rainy day, Yadina pretended to be a bug. And Xavier pretended to be...
A baseball player.
And Xavier pretended to be a baseball player. Yadina and Xavier pretended they were inside.
A library.
Yadina and Xavier pretended they were inside a library. When suddenly, they pretended the floor turned into...
Lava.
When suddenly, they pretended the floor turned into lava. I'll save them. So then, Brad pretended to rescue his friends as...
Bike
So
Man.
then, Brad pretended to rescue his friends as... Dun 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 dun, Bike Man. Yay, Brad, our brave hero! Xavier and Yadina were proud to have such a brave friend as they climbed aboard Brad's rescue.
A boat.
Xavier and Yadina were proud to have such a brave friend as they climbed aboard Brad's rescue boat.
That was amazing!
The end. Thanks for telling such a surprising story about us.
And pretending some amazing things.
Just like the Bronte sisters.
And that's it.